Hello, YouTube. This is Largo64, continuing now with part 11 of Letters from the Earth by Mark Twain. In part 10, we got cut off in the middle of a paragraph, and I'm going to start at the beginning of that paragraph and continue as much as possible here. But man is only briefly competent, and only then in the moderate measure applicable to the word in his sex's case. He is competent from the age of 16 or 17, thenceforward for 35 years. After 50, his performance is of poor quality. The intervals between are wide, and its satisfactions of no great value to either party, whereas his great-grandmother is as good as new. There's nothing the matter with her plant. Her candlestick is as firm as ever, whereas his candle is increasingly softened and weakened by the weather of age, as the years go by, until at last it can no longer stand, and is mournfully laid to rest in the hope of a blessed resurrection, which is never to come. By the woman's make, her plant has to be out of service 3 days in the month, and during part of her pregnancy. These are times of discomfort, often suffering. For fair and just compensation, she has the high privilege of unlimited adultery all the other days of her life. That is the law of God as revealed in her make. What becomes of this high privilege? Does she live in free enjoyment of it? No, nowhere in the whole world. She is robbed of it everywhere. Who does this? Man. Man's statutes, if the Bible is the Word of God. Now there you have a sample of man's reasoning powers, as he calls them. He observes certain facts. For instance, that in all his life he never sees the day that he can satisfy one woman. Also, that no woman ever sees the day that she can't overwork and defeat and put out of commission any 10 masculine plants that can be put to bed to her. He puts those strikingly suggestive and luminous facts together, and from them draws this astonishing conclusion. The Creator intended the woman to be restricted to one man. So he concretes that singular conclusion into law for good and all, and he does it without consulting the woman, although she has 1,000 times more at stake in the matter than he has. His procreative competency is limited to an average of 100 exercises per year for 50 years. Hers is good for 3,000 a year for that whole time, and as many more years longer as she may live. Thus, his life interest in the matter is 5,000 refreshments, while hers is 150,000. Yet, instead of fairly and honorably leaving the making of the law to the person who has an overwhelming interest at stake in it, this immeasurable hog, who has nothing at stake in it worth considering, makes it himself. You have heretofore found out by my teachings that man is a fool. You are now aware that woman is a damn fool. Now, if you or any other really intelligent person were arranging the fairness and justices between man and woman, you would give the man 1/50th interest in one woman and the woman a harem. Now, wouldn't you? Necessarily. I give you my word, this creature with the decrepit candle has arranged it exactly the other way. Solomon, who was one of the deity's favorites, had a copulation cabinet composed of 700 wives and 300 concubines. To save his life, he could not have kept 2 of these young creatures satisfactorily refreshed, even if he had 15 experts to help him. Necessarily, almost the entire 1,000 had to go hungry years and years on a stretch. Conceive of a man hard-hearted enough to look daily upon all that suffering and not be moved to mitigate it. He even wantonly added a sharp pang to that pathetic misery, for he kept within those women's sight always stalwart watchmen whose splendid masculine forms made the poor lasses' mouths water, but who hadn't anything to solace a candlestick with, these gentry being eunuchs. A eunuch is a person whose candle has been put out by art. From time to time, as I go along, I will take up a biblical statute and show you that it always violates a law of God and then is imported into the law books of the nations where it continues its violations. But those things will keep. There is no hurry. Letter 9. The ark continued its voyage, drifting around here and there and yonder, compassless and uncontrolled, the sport of the random winds and swirling currents, and the rain, the rain, the rain. It kept falling, pouring, drenching, flooding. No such rain had ever been seen before. 16 inches a day had been heard of, but that was nothing to this. This was 120 inches a day, 10 feet. At this incredible rate, it rained 40 days and 40 nights, and submerged every hill that was 400 feet high. Then the heavens and even the angels went dry. No more water was to be had. As a universal flood, it was a disappointment. But there had been heaps of universal floods before, as witnessed by all the Bibles of all the nations, and this was as good as the best one. At last the ark soared aloft and came to rest on top of Mount Ararat, 17,000 feet above the valley, and its living freight got out and went down the mountain. Noah planted a vineyard and drank the wine and was overcome. This person had been selected from all the populations because he was the best sample there was. He was to start the human race on a new basis. This was the new basis. The promise was bad. To go further with the experiment was to run a great and most unwise risk. Now was the time to do with these people what had been so judiciously done with the others. Drown them. Anybody but the Creator would have seen this, but he didn't see it. That is, maybe he didn't. It is claimed that from the beginning of time he foresaw everything that would happen in the world. If that is true, he foresaw that Adam and Eve would eat the apple, that their posterity would be unendurable and have to be drowned, that Noah's posterity would in their turn be unendurable, and that by and by he would have to leave his throne in heaven and come down and be crucified to save that same tiresome human race again. The whole of it? No. A part of it? Yes. How much of it? In each generation, for hundreds and hundreds of generations, 1 billion would die, and all would go to perdition, except perhaps 10,000 out of the billion. The 10,000 would have come from a little body of Christians, and only 1 in 100 of that little body would stand any chance. None of them at all, except such Roman Catholics as should have the luck to have a priest handy to sandpaper their souls at the last gasp, and here and there a Presbyterian. No others savable, all the others damned, by the million. Shall you grant that he foresaw all this? The pulpit grants it. It is the same as granting that in the matter of intellect, the deity is the head pauper of the universe, and that in the matter of morals and character, he is way down on the level of David. Letter 10. The two testaments are interesting, each in its own way. The old one gives us a picture of these people's deity as he was before he got religion. The other one gives us a picture of him as he appeared afterward. The Old Testament is interested mainly in blood and sensuality, the new one in salvation. Salvation by fire. The first time the deity came down to earth, he brought life and death. When he came the second time, he brought hell. Life was not a valuable gift, but death was. Life was a fever dream made up of joys, embittered by sorrows, pleasure poisoned by pain, a dream that was a nightmare confusion of spasmodic and fleeting delights, ecstasies, exultations, happinesses, interspersed with long-drawn miseries, griefs, perils, horrors, disappointments, defeats, humiliations, and despairs. I've only got about 30 seconds left. I'm going to take this up right in the middle of this paragraph in the next section, which I think is going to be 12. I'll check that, but I think it's number 12. Thanks for watching. I'm looking in the wrong place. There you are.